With me to my immediate left, a very familiar face here on Fox News, Eric Bolling, up early for us. Normally you'd be on at 5 with the specialist. Congratulations on the success of your book.
Amazing.
That really unwinds the success of President Trump. It's called The Swamp, Washington's Murky Pool of Corruption and Cronyism, and How Trump Can Drain It. Opens up at number 3 in the New York Times.
Number 3 in the New York Times. Thank you very much. I was here
Our viewers are the best, aren't they?
You guys are amazing. It was unbelievable. Right to the top of the charts after that first Tuesday. Can I just make a quick point about this? This is amazing. This is so smart what the Trump administration did. I think Steve Miller was the one who recognized that Trump has a very captive audience in Poland. They're thinking the same way he is. Their president was elected the same way that Donald Trump was elected. Put thousands of tens of thousands of people in the square. Let Trump address that group. What a great start to the what he's going to run into when he goes over to Hamburg, Germany with Angela Merkel. This is a really brilliant strategy on their part. The other thing I'd like to note, and I'm listening to this coverage, one of the most important things Donald Trump did when he walked into office was he started repealing regulation on the energy markets. The U.S. energy markets are unleashed. They're the real driving force behind what's going on in the economy right now. Look at Poland. Look what goes on in Eastern Europe. They're at the mercy of Russia because they don't produce their own energy, and we haven't for decades, and now we are. We're becoming self-sufficient in energy. That was one of the smartest moves.
So true.
LNG. We're actually shipping LNG. That's liquefied natural gas that was produced here, taken out of the ground here, and shipping it to Poland. That is just a fantastic economic success story for the Trump administration.
Well, the president did mention today the approval of the Keystone Pipeline, the approval of Dakota Access, and now we're shipping natural gas to other countries so that other countries don't have to depend on communist countries like Russia.
You know, I spent 20 years in the oil industry, and I remember years where we were worried about whether we were going to have gasoline in the gas pumps, whether we were going to be held hostage by OPEC for their oil. Now it's the shoe's on the other foot.
Well, did you
They're asking us for oil. This
we're
is
exporting
amazing.
for the first time.
For the first time.
Yet we were slow to capitalize on it until recently.
But think about that last energy spike in 2004, 2005. Our businesses were strangled by the cost of fuel. Airlines were charging surcharges. You delivered, Poland Spring water delivery was getting an energy surcharge. We don't have that anymore. The unleashing of the U.S. energy markets is probably the most successful thing that Donald Trump has done of all the things he's done.
He mentioned in the speech this morning that we're standing here in America on blessed ground, and we've just discovered it over the last 15 years, I believe he said. What did he mean by that? What's underneath?
So that, right, the fracking, the natural gas. We've always had it, and we've had trillions upon trillions of barrels, but we've never really gone to this new way of extracting the oil, the natural gas through fracking methods. Remember, at the beginning, Barack Obama was against fracking. He thought it was environmentally unfriendly, so he pushed back. Now he embraced it over the course of his 8 years because it was so
Ohio
strong.
And Pennsylvania.
Well, okay, Ohio, Pennsylvania, but also the massive amount of economic push that we get from bringing that gas out of the ground. There were times where natural gas per million cubic feet cost $17 per million. It's down to like $2 per million, and that's great for businesses and homes.
So our president is going to be talking to Vladimir Putin tomorrow. There was, as we just heard from John Roberts, a question about Russian hacking into the election and stuff like that. The big question is whether or not the president is going to mention that to Vladimir Putin tomorrow, or will it be about, okay, we got to get together on ISIS, we got to do something in Syria. What else?
Well, I hope he focuses on North Korea. I would hope that everything that they talk about, the bilateral with Putin, and whether it's a sidebar or bilateral with Xi, Chinese President Xi, I hope they focus in on what are we going to do with that crazy dictator to China's south, that North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un.
There aren't many good options.
It is a global problem right now. Honestly, I said last night on The Specialist, I think diplomacy's gone. I think negotiating is gone. I think we're down to a massive covert cyber war right on North Korea.
Nikki Haley said she's not shying away from that. If we have to use forces, we will. But what's more to say on North Korea than what he said this morning at the speech? He said, basically, I'm not going to tell the world my strategy and what we're going to do. He did talk about how there are consequences for bad behavior and we're willing to go to the extreme.
Think about this. In 1950, when the first Korean War started, it started because North Korea attacked South Korea without anyone knowing about it. All of a sudden, there was an attack on the border, and they went in. Who's to stop them from doing it again? Only this time, instead of South Korea, maybe it's South Korea, Japan, or maybe it's South Korea, Japan, and send an ICBM towards Alaska. This regime is crazy. So why do we sit and wait for them to do something stupid? Because they've done it in the past. Why not preemptively take out their systems. I would even go so far as take out their government infrastructure as well via cyber.
Yeah, we got 35,000 troops on that DMZ line, so that might be the difference. I'm very curious to see, because we already know where Russia stands. They don't want anything to do with sanctions. They said it yesterday. Nikki Haley extremely tough and conversant on this issue. We know what the Kremlin wants out of this meeting. We don't know what the president wants because he hasn't made it clear. But Vladimir Putin says the Kremlin hopes to establish a working dialogue with the U.S. But the one thing that I think the U.S. has an advantage that Vladimir Putin always has in his advantage is the unpredictability. He usually does great homework on his leaders to find out where they do and what they don't do, what their strengths and weaknesses are. They can't figure out where President Trump is coming from because he's so new and because he does shoot from the hip a lot.
Here's the thing. So everyone's making a lot of this big meeting, the two world leaders, two macho guys, who's going to be the alpha, who's going to be the beta. Look at it this way, and it goes back to this energy market discussion again. The U.S. economy is banging on all cylinders. Our record high stock market, in fact, Trump mentioned it in that last address he made, our record low, multi-decade low in unemployment. So home prices are brimming. Meanwhile, Russia is strangling because they're at the mercy of an oil price. Sure. Oil prices are going down, and the Russian economy is struggling because of a low.
Station, right?
They're an oil and gas station, yeah, and they're dying because of the price of oil. Sure. Meanwhile, that's great for us. So there's one guy with the upper hand. That's going to be Trump over Putin.
One other dynamic that's going on right now in Europe is everybody looks to Germany, and Angela Merkel has allowed in, the hundreds of thousands of refugees. Like the Trump administration, President Duda over in Poland, as we see Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner arriving. The president of Poland's government is trying to limit the number of refugees it resettles as the EU, the European Union, tries to get them to open the borders. So, the president of the United States and the president of Poland are, they're kind of on the same page.
I think that's why you're seeing so many people that turned out. I mean, it was like, I think they said invite 50 of your closest friends, and everyone invited 50 of their closest friends and showed up because they have the same. And isn't it nice to see a group of people appreciating that versus what you get from here?
Well, for example, in London, when the president got word that, hey, there's going to be some protests, Theresa May's kind of on the fence with me and me with her, and we know the problem with the London mayor. He goes, you know what? I'm not going to go. Yeah. I'm going to put that off. When you guys get your act together, let me know. One thing is pretty clear. The German Chancellor Merkel is definitely running for re-election. She told Die Zeit, which is, I guess, one of their leading weekly newspapers, magazines, has said she stands by her earlier suggestion that Europe can no longer entirely rely on the U.S. Read between the lines there. She just speaking bluster to get another some more years as president, or does she feel as though the U.S. doesn't have their back?
It's amazing that she's going there, given the unpopularity of the open borders that she instituted in Germany. I mean, with all the terror that's going on throughout the European continent, the travel between countries without any sort of requirement for passports, it really hasn't worked yet, and she's going to push back on President Trump. I think this is more along the lines of she's setting up the initial confrontation between her and Trump being that, remember, he pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, and that's really ticking her off. Apparently, she's going to bring it up. Hopefully he says, okay, listen, this is a Donald Trump move right here. We don't necessarily want to pull out. We'll get a better deal, and maybe we'll get back in.
Because that's what he would say.
He loves the deal.
The deal was a disaster.
Right.
That's exactly
How about the NATO deal? This was what's interesting, because for the folks at home that don't know much about NATO, I didn't know in the past administration, to be honest with you, that we were pouring in all this money, and all these other countries weren't doing it. But Poland was doing it. We were doing it. There are only a few countries that are part of NATO. Only five out of how many? Like 24.
27, and maybe a 28 for Montenegro if they're finally, I guess they're approved for some reason. Anyway, but you're right.